川普再次上台后，对美国的盟友们，包括对台湾的一系列操作，你从媒体上看到了什么？
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning. Sure. First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influenced.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influenced.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
我们周五在华盛顿白宫的会面并未如预期般进行，这令人遗憾。现在是时候让事情回到正轨。我们希望未来的合作与沟通能够更具建设性。
Today, Taiwan Semiconductor is announcing that they will be investing at least $100 billion in new capital in the United States over the next short period of time to build state-of-the-art semiconductor manufacturing facilities. I think mostly it's going to be in Arizona, which is what I understand, which is a great state. The most powerful AI chips in the world will be made right here in America. And it'll be a big percentage of the chips made by his company. But as you know, they're based mostly in Taiwan. And they're far and away the biggest. There's nobody even close. This $100 billion in new investment will go into building 5 cutting-edge fabrication facilities in the great state that we just discussed, Arizona, and will create thousands of jobs, many thousands of jobs, and they're high-paying jobs. In total, today's announcement brings Taiwan Semiconductor investments to about $165 billion they've started already. This will create hundreds of billions of dollars in economic activity and boost America's dominance in artificial intelligence and beyond. This is a tremendous move by the most powerful company in the world. It's a matter of economic security. It's also a matter of national security for us. And at the same time, Mr. Wei will be able to diversify and have his a tremendous presence in another place, and a very safe place. And I want to thank Taiwan Semiconductor for doing the announcement. And I'd like to ask Mr. Wei to say a few words, if he might.
With the success of our first fab, so we are now very happy to announce we are going to invest additional $100 billion in addition to our current $65 billion investment in Arizona. We are going to build 3 more new fabs after we promised the 3 fabs already, and another 2 very advanced packaging fab, and most important, R&D center also in Arizona. For this, all the investment, $165 billion, is going to create thousands of the high-paid jobs, as the president just announced. And we are, most important, actually, we are going to produce many AI chips. We're going to produce many chips to support the AI progress and to support the smartphones progress.
Could this minimize the impact of the U.S. with chips should China decide to isolate Taiwan or China decide to take Taiwan?
Well, it's a very interesting point. It's a great question, actually. But this would certainly, I can't say minimize. That would be a catastrophic event, obviously. But it will at least give us a position where we have, in this very, very important business, we would have a very big part of it in the United States. So it would have a big impact if something should happen with Taiwan.
昨天这个事情宣布之后，网络上有非常多的讨论，有非常多的网友担心说台积电变成美积电，部长。
这个是多余的。如果我们从台积电的全球布局来看，又或者是从台湾产业发展的路程来看，我们都不难发现，几十年来所累积的实力已经足够让台湾自信地跨越太平洋，东破到美洲大陆，重新建构一个新的产业布局的时候了。
这个赖总统昨天就吩咐说，一定要好好的跟各位讲解，说我们为什么到美国去1000亿美金的投资。其实台积电，我们到每一个地方去盖生产线，都是为了客户的需求，这是第一个，从来没有违背过的。我们到日本去，因为日本的客户的需求；到德国去，因为德国客户的需求。这一次到美国去，现在加大投资，因为美国的客户需求量非常的大。
Now, a
lot of people started to twist this and say, "Oh, 你看，川普有台积电，所以他一定会 abandon Taiwan." Everybody panic! I said it before and I will say it again. Taiwan's importance to America has very little to do with microchips. 台积电 is very important to Taiwan on business terms, especially when it comes to GDP. But when it comes to geopolitical strategy, it has very little, if anything, to do with it at all.
尽管执政高层与亲执政党的自媒体淡化台积电在美扩大投资对台湾可能带来的影响，但民众们买单吗？
讲讨论台美安全合作的时候，他说 "We are praying that this will happen." 市长，你们经营外交政策的时候是以 praying 为主吗？这是台湾唯一的选择吗？Praying for America to help。
但是你知道吗？这个时候呢，因为你知道对外国人来讲 ，praying 就有一点祈求的感觉嘛。那在我看了一些就是台湾的媒体在翻译这个 title 的时候，他就写说把它用成盼。希望
这个不对，
我觉得这个翻译不够到位，不够精准，
完全不到位。
应该是说你用 praying 这个单词，如果在英文的语义上面，其实有一点点稍微失了一点自尊吗？
而且他用 praying， 从我们外国人的角度来看，他的意思是我们没有其他的选择，只有省下 prayer，please America， 深化台美安全关系。拜托你，拜托你。
So my view that the combination of the greater threat from China and the lack of preparedness on our part, I have a different assessment with respect, Senator, about Taiwan's efforts. I think actually as a proportion of GDP, it's well below 3%. I agree with President Trump that they should be more like 10%, or at least something in that ballpark, really focused on their defense.
面对川普掀起的关税战，美国的邻国兼盟友加拿大又是如何回应的呢？
So today, the United States launched a trade war against Canada, their closest partner and ally, their closest friend. At the same time, they're talking about working positively with Russia, appeasing Vladimir Putin, a lying, murderous dictator. Make that make sense. Canadians are reasonable, and we are polite, but we will not back down from a fight. Not when our country and the well-being of everyone in it is at stake. At the moment, the U.S. tariffs came into effect in the early hours of this morning, and so did the Canadian response. Canada will be implementing 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods, starting with tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods immediately, and tariffs on the remaining $125 billion of American products in 21 days' time.
Taiwan is somewhat to blame.
Okay, we just told you how Trump's semiconductor tariffs could be a devastating blow to Taiwan. But what if I told you that the island's biggest problem is not occupying an office in Washington, but sitting right at home? Yes, that's correct. Taiwan not only suffers from external pressures within its own territory, there have also been political decisions that have pushed its companies to seek refuge in other countries. Earlier, I told you about TSMC, the crown jewel of the Taiwanese semiconductor industry. Well, this technological giant is already making moves and investing billions, not only in the United States, but also in countries such as Japan and Germany.
TSMC lifts chip investment in Japan above 20 billion USD. Taiwanese semiconductor maker seeking to reduce geopolitical risk plans to add second plant with help from Toyota.
Germany, for example, has a plan to produce 20% of the world's semiconductors locally by 2030, in collaboration precisely with TSMC, which has committed to huge investments in exchange for subsidies and tax advantages of all kinds. But of course, the question many of you are probably asking right now is, why do Taiwanese companies seem so keen to stop expanding their factories in Taiwan and take them offshore? Well, keep one thing very much in mind. Political and military risks with China are not the only reason. In fact, they may not even be the main culprit. If there is one thing the semiconductor industry needs, it's energy. Lots and lots of energy. Plenty of energy, available at all times, and cheap. To give you an idea, TSMC alone consumed 6.4% of all electricity in Taiwan in 2021. And now, in 2025, it is estimated that this percentage could reach 12.5%. In other words, 1 out of every 8 megawatts generated in Taiwan will go directly to TSMC. And that's truly outrageous. In fact, it's right there, in this huge energy demand, where the great political problem arises. Look at this.
Taiwan shuts second to last nuclear plant in controversial shift. Decision could make island more dependent on energy imports. Taiwan aims to decommission last reactor by May next year, 2025.
Just at the moment when it needs more energy, and when it's experiencing more tensions with China, Taiwan is closing its nuclear plants. And with it, they are losing a cheap and reliable source of supply. In other words, they're following the same steps as Merkel's Germany. Really, Taiwan? We admire the achievements of this country, but isn't this shooting yourself in the foot? Visual politic community, up until a few years ago, the country had 3 nuclear reactors that provided a stable supply of electricity. But in 2021, the government suddenly organized a referendum, and the majority of the population voted against starting up a 4th plant that had been under construction for 15 years, which naturally meant a lot of money and effort thrown down the drain. And today, despite the fact that almost 60% of the population now supports nuclear energy, Taiwan will close its last atomic power plant in May. Well, the fact is that given such a situation, there is yet another question. What on earth has this island been supplied with all these years? Well, it's true that nuclear energy never represented a very large part of the Taiwanese energy mix, but it still brought a certain stability, lower prices, and energy independence. In fact, Taiwan has even experienced power outages and rationing due to high energy consumption and the lack of a secure supply. What's more, the end of nuclear power and the trend to replace it with fossil fuels has further worsened the country's high dependence on the outside world. More than 97% of the island's energy needs come from abroad. This dependence leaves the country completely vulnerable to possible supply interruptions and large price fluctuations. Thus, in recent years, dependence on oil, coal, and gas to produce electricity, resources that Taiwan does not have, as you can imagine, have increased dramatically. For example, it's estimated that in gas reserves, there's only 1 week of guaranteed supply. Crazy. All this places the world semiconductor king in an even more vulnerable position for the future and makes it extremely dependent on international markets. Now, why is this so important? Well, because if China decided to block the supply routes, Taiwan could run out of electricity within a matter of a few days. And don't forget that in 2022, when Nancy Pelosi, then Speaker of the US House of Representatives, visited Taiwan, China responded with a partial military blockade and exercises simulating an attack on the island. Well, during those days, maritime traffic plummeted, creating a temporary problem in supply chains. If this were to happen on a more serious level, Taipei might find it impossible to get the oil, coal, and gas that drive its colossal chip industry, because it could export the chips temporarily by air, as it already does in part today, but then it could not do the same to buy oil or gas, so it would be left in the dark. And here comes the problem. Taiwan's only remaining source of energy that it could rely on in an emergency is the very one that is currently being shut down.
非核家园是台湾执政的民进党多年来坚守的理想，不可动摇的信念。如今，随着许多国家纷纷重返核能怀抱，台湾是否也该重新审视并调整路线？
给大家一个不一样的观念。到目前为止，我要评论一下，请问石油燃烧、煤炭燃烧、天然气燃烧，它的废弃物大家怎么收集、怎么处置？答案是没有收集，也没有处置，哪里去了呢？往大区放，把内部的成本外部化，所以地球造成暖化。可是反核的人却苛求说，那你一定要处置核废料。我就问说，那你要不要处置一下燃煤跟天然气的废料？答案是他答不出来，所以拒绝回答。核废料所需要的空间放在水池，就是一座奥运标准池还不到一半。所以有一任经济部长看完了核电厂的水池，跑来找我聊天说，他本来很恐慌，说水池满了。他去看了以后，他回过头来问我说，有一个很奇怪的问题在他心里涌上来：水池满了，为什么不多盖一座水池？你就可以再继续用20年。那个水池是有多大呢？就是我问他有多大，他说就是比一个奥运的标准泳池小的这个水池。所有的核废料加总起来就是一个小巨蛋的空间，这是目前核能集中保管废料最可贵的地方，它不会占据你的庞大的国土啊。 他们的绿能一度成本只要3块钱左右，因为我在大陆工厂有购买绿能啊。台湾差不多快要1.5倍到2倍。在这个情形下，台积电现在用电一年会350亿度，原来230亿度，随着时间的推展，2奈米量产以后350亿度，一度电如果贵3块钱，请问350亿度乘以3是多少？1000亿。台积电目前处在火红当红跟获利高的时候 ，affordable。如果它营运遇到竞争对手比较辛苦的时候，这个1000亿就会成为很大的包袱啊。好，那民营的这个电厂更贵啊，风力发电跟你开口到6块7，这是实时的交易。目前以我了解的，有些直接去跟厂商跟台积电兜售，敢开价到7块到10块啊。那以往我们的用电是3块不到，现在变7块10块，一口气涨这么多。如果你承诺所谓的 RE100， 也就是都要用绿能，叫做 RE100， 你根本就负担不起啊。台湾的情形在这个地方，黑色煤炭、灰色天然气、紫色核能。一旦把核能拿掉以后，核3厂的1号机拿掉的时候，已经重启卖疗了啊。那核3厂的2号机如果再拿掉，我不晓得要重启哪里火力发电才能够补上来。那大概就是有90%左右就是排碳的发电，不排碳只剩下10%啊。
Trump's sudden decision has shown United States allies that when the time comes, Washington could block its own weapons to force them to accept whatever conditions Uncle Sam deems appropriate at any given moment. So what does this mean? That continuing to work in this way is real nonsense. And watch out, because we're talking about Europe, but also about South Korea, Japan, and practically any other allied country. They can no longer rely on the technological capabilities of the United States. If they want to protect their security, they have to develop their own combat systems.
所以我超级好奇，在美国他们接下来要怎么做。不过还是感谢他们投了钱，然后让川普很开心，然后可能对台湾可能暂时会好一点。对啊，那我看到很多人讨论说这个东西到底对台湾接下来有没有保障什么的。我觉得最多就暂时让川普忘记关税这件事情个1-2年吧。我觉得最多1-2年，因为接下来要选举，他美国要选举嘛，他可能要拿这个出来弄一下之类的。我自己的感受是这样子，当然这是 based on my personal feelings, not by facts.